with some victories to our credit. As the record further shows, a main object of Moscow's subliminal onslaught was to plant secret agents in the United States and other Western nations, with emphasis on official agencies that dealt with military, intelligence, or foreign policy issues. From these positions, pro-Soviet operatives were able to engage in policy sabotage, spying, and other species of subversion that advanced the interests of the Kremlin. As shall be seen, activity of this type was involved in countless aspects of the Cold War story. Among the information sources now available on such matters, those most often cited are the Venona decrypts, compiled by the U.S. Army Signal Corps in the 1940s. Venona was the code name given to encrypted messages exchanged between the Red intelligence bosses in Moscow and their agents in this country. The Army codebreakers intercepted thousands of these missives, and by a painstaking process were able to decipher a substantial number. This information, reflecting the extent of the Soviets' activities in the United States and the identities of many of their contacts, were shared by the Army with the FBI to counter and eventually help break various of the pro-Red networks. These decrypts weren't made public until 1995, half a century after they were first recorded. Other revelations dating from the 1990s include material from the archives of the Soviet Union and other East Bloc nations when, for a brief period after the Communists were toppled from power, such records were made available to researchers. The most recent such disclosures are the so-called Vasilyev papers, named for a former Soviet intelligence staffer who made voluminous copies of secret records and smuggled them out of Russia when he defected to the West. Similar revelations had been made by previous such defectors, including Oleg Gordievsky, Stanislav Levchenko, and Viktor Kravchenko, along with Native American defectors such as Whittaker Chambers and Elizabeth Bentley. Of importance also, though an underrated source, are the confidential archives of the FBI, which was tracking and recording the activities of Communists and Soviet agents in the United States before Venona came online and before the advent of the Cold War. In some recent studies, the efforts of the FBI in this regard have been disparaged, but on close inspection, these negative comments aren't backed up by the record. In some cases of the New Deal years, the Bureau may have missed clues it should have noted, but by the early 1940s, it was far ahead of other U.S. agencies in spotting and combating the infiltration problem. To all of which there should be added, though this too is much neglected, a sizable trove of information about Red activity in the United States, collected by committees of the Congress, based on the testimony of ex-communist witnesses, the findings of staff investigators, and information from intelligence agencies, security squads at the State Department, and other official bodies. Like the endeavors of the FBI, the work of the committees was often downgraded or ignored while the Cold War was in progress. As may be seen today in the light of the new disclosures, the hearings and reports of the House Committee on Un-American Activities, Senate Internal Security Subcommittee, and other panels of the Congress were and are a goldmine of useful information on Cold War issues. Looking at this considerable body of data and matching one set of materials with another, we can draw certain definite conclusions about the scope of Soviet communist activity in the United States and other target nations. First and foremost, it's evident from now available records that communist penetration of our government and our society in general was, over a span of decades, massive. Hundreds of Soviet agents, Communist Party members, and fellow travelers were ensconced on official payrolls, beginning in the New Deal era, then increasing rapidly during World War II, when the Soviets were our allies against the Nazis.